Hey everyone, today I have the pleasure to be joined by the incredible Paula Fairfield, who is an expert sound designer, a passionate field recordist, and best known for her creature sound design skills. She's worked on projects like Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, and Rings of Power, just to name a few. Paula, thank you for being with me here today.
Oh, my pleasure.
And yeah, let's just get right into the questions. First off,
Cool.
of course, so like I already said in the intro, you're famous for your incredible creature sound design skills. So I just wanted to ask you, what is your approach when you get tasked with designing a new creature from kind of like planning all the way to finished product on screen?
A simple question we start with.
Very, very
Um,
simple.
I mean, do I have a singular approach? I think the thing that the sandbox I like to play in the most is an area that I kind of call speculative realism. So, what would this fantastical creature be like if it was standing before you, like the dragons. And in fact, for Rings of Power, that's kind of what they asked me for. The brief was basically, we want these animals to feel like like a document, like if you came across them, you could possibly come across them in the forest, that kind of idea. So it's a fun area to play in because it's like somehow, they're mythical creatures or they're fantastical creatures, but you want to kind of somehow feel that they're real. And I love that. I love that area because we don't know really what they sound like. So you can go as far as you want, but what are the edges of what we will accept as real? How do we put something in that design that pulls you in and says, "Oh yeah, I can buy this." Yeah, that feels like, it's like I mean, I want when and part of it is my 5-year-old is always playing. It's like I want to be able to reach out and boop a dragon in the nose, or feel it's like gnarly, stinky breath. What is that? What would that feel like? I mean, how awesome would that be to be standing in front of a dragon? But so that's me kind of wanting that as a kind of a kid, the kid inside and playing with that. And so that's kind of how I approach it. And I mean, truly these days with the advances of visual effects and sound technology, you know, we're able to do things we never could do before and bring kind of a sense of realism to things that we have never been able to do before. So it's really an exciting time, but it also calls upon, from a sound point of view, because the visual effects have progressed so much, to bring that sort of heightened realism and how we can do that. So I look to, I have dogs, I watch them and how they interact and how, it's like someone said to me once, it's like we were talking about this and it's so true. It's like, lions roar and dogs bark, but like, what are all the beautiful things that happen in between? And, we are really shaping performances. We're creating characters, so it's like I kind of approach it in that way and go through and look at the beats of the scene, look at the emotional spots that I can exploit, crawl across all the visual effects whenever they come in, which is often last minute, but crawl across the visual effects and look at what are the moments I can exploit to pull the realism forward. And then, I usually use these days, I've tried lots of different stuff. I've tried using human vocals. I try using, uh, some synthetic stuff. For me, the most satisfying is using real animal sounds because, when they emit an emotion, they're not acting, there's no hidden agenda. It's a primal act. And it's the closest we get to pure emotion. So I'm fascinated by that area and how I can use that and how I can bring that in, and like I say, playing off my own animals, little things that might, I'm burying little things that feel familiar, but in this creature that's unfamiliar, to kind of make that bridge between the fantastical and the real, kind of, it's all that stuff. And I constantly am playing with all the new technology that's evolving. I mean, we're in quite interesting times, aren't we? It's like we're on the precipice of technology, AI, that's scary as hell. But also there's like offers these, I mean, it's seductive too, because it's offering this the possibilities of technology are entering new phases with stuff that we've been working on and building on. So as creators, it's like, are we going to be obliterated or just have some new cool tools? I don't know. We don't know. So, we edge forward with this, and I'm, I mean, all of us here at this conference are artists, so it's interesting times. Artists will take that and flip it on its ear and turn things inside out and do things that sometimes were never intended, and that's the kind of cool area that we all play in. So yeah, it's a long winding answer, but anyway.
No, that's awesome. I mean, going into that a little bit. So obviously with AI and all of these things, one of the things I find as a sound designer is the options are endless. And with creatures, kind of that is similar, especially when there's something that doesn't exist yet, unless, you've got a very specific brief. But it's kind of, with the tools and technology, you said you experiment a lot, and I feel like that always creates more and more and more options. Yeah. Is there any way that you have managed to bring into your workflow to eliminate those options, kind of, because that's one of the things that I often struggle with, where there's so many things. Like, okay, how do I manage to kind of make it a little bit more to the point? Focus. Yeah, exactly. Focus. Yeah.
Well, there's lots of different ways. Everybody's got different ways of doing it. For me, I make a story, and so it's kind of like actors preparing for a role in a way. I mean, they'll often do a backstory and make choices based on that, and that's kind of, in the end, again, it's like my 5-year-old kid playing. It's like, okay, I'm going to make a story up about a dragon, and here we go. And so it's like deciding what the parameters are, deciding what the personality of this creature is, deciding how, also, for me, deciding where its weak spot is. So is there a little bit of vulnerability that can come through there, can make you feel sad for the creature at any moment? And I play in that area a lot, because it's like, we also, I mean, I noticed this a bunch of years ago with the dragons. I went down to Whiteout Conservation Area, so they have 13,000 acres of beautiful exotic animals, and I went there and did some recording and used a lot of exotic recordings from our fabulous colleagues who are recording all over the world. So much available to us now, which is amazing in our community. And I realized here I am, building mythical creatures that are some weird way more well loved than the animals who are going into extinction on our planet, And so I always try to build in something that is, try to evoke empathy, and to make people think about. I mean, it isn't really, I mean, I know it sounds like lofty thoughts, but I think about it, and so I build some of that stuff in. So to make, and when do we, with endless TikToks and reels, IG reels of, and I post constantly about my dogs, on, it's like the things that make you go, ah, or, often they're kind of like a little quirky thing, or, a little sad little thing, or a little cry or something. And so I work to put some of that stuff in these creatures, so that, because it brings you closer. You'll lean in a little further, and maybe, we can think about the irony of what we're doing, which is, it's like the dragons were like weird to me in a way, because they're so beloved, but it's like, guys, we have they're made from the voices, cries, the literal cries of animals on our planet, you know, we're killing off. Like, it's crazy shit, you know. It seems easier for us to love these creatures that we encounter in our games and in our stories. And, you know, I constantly am thinking about that and trying to find ways of injecting some compassion, you know, in these works, you know. So.
It goes to show as well how much kind of sound can create personality and really incredibly strong connection between, yeah, I guess the listener, the viewer, and the actual creature on screen or in the game. It's incredibly fascinating. You said you do a lot of recording. What kind of, how do you go and approach that in terms of, do you do that often, just, or basically project based, or what is your kind of workflow for that?
Yeah, I'm very, you know, these days with schedules and my work for the last bunch of years has wandered farther away from film and closer into TV, where the schedules are insane, really, the amount of work we're pumping out in a short period of time. So there's often not a lot of time to go recording. I mean, I will do stuff when I can. Otherwise, I'm very sort of like, it's very utility based. Like, if I can't find something that I can manipulate or turn into something, then I'll record specifically for that, little bits and pieces of things. So it's a combination of things. As I said before, I mean, we have now, when I started, there wasn't this. We didn't have the same kind of schedules, but we also, so we had more time to do recording, but we also did not have this amazing community now, international community of recordists all over the world. And I have to be honest, you know, before I start every project, and whether I use them or not, to get inspired, I go on, you know, our fabulous marketplaces, Sound Effect, or, you know, any number of other, you know, independents who are have their sonic wares available, to shop and listen and, you know, and buy stuff that inspires me, listen to all kinds of recordings. And even if I don't end up using them in the piece, it just it's new stuff that stimulates me and gives me ideas. And as I said before, you know, I often will just, like, in my mind, create a story which becomes the basis for the design. It's just a set of parameters to work inside, because you're right. Otherwise, you're just flailing around. And if you have to design over 10 hours in a series for a season, let alone if the series continues on and you've got to continue that design, you have to look down the road. Like, I remember starting Game of Thrones, it was like, I mean, the dragons alone were challenging, but then to realize, as I started going from season to season, and this thing kept going on and on and on, and it's like, oh my God, these designs have to grow and grow and grow, and like remnants of them have to remain, but they have to turn into adults, and they have to die, and then, oh my God, one's an icy dragon zombie now. What, you know, how do I, you know, it's like, it's interesting, right? I mean, you've got to kind of plan for the future. So starting with like something really clear, doesn't matter if the people you're working for don't. I mean, often these days you'll find, I don't know how everybody else is finding, I'm finding less and less people know what they want. It's weird. I mean, I don't know if it's like, if it's laziness. I don't know what's going on, but I do caution people. You tell me to go crazy with something, I am, and you're going to get what you get. I'm going to have a blast, and my mind is pretty wild, so I'll come up with some crazy shit. And you know, I think it's really important for us, because they're not going to do it for us, to come up with backstories and ideas and parameters and little things that we also know. I mean, if a game goes on to multi-versions, or if a show goes on to multi-seasons, keep some pockets open that you can continue your design, so that you don't feel you have to redesign from scratch, because that brings in all kinds of problems, you know. And also, it's very unsatisfying. I mean, if you can grow something up and then leave a little bit behind, but take some forward, and then maybe even at crisis moments refer back to a baby sound that screeches or something. Like it's all that kind of planning, and we have to do that for ourselves. That people we're working for are, I don't know what it is. I mean, more and more of them have multi shows going on. I mean, they're not, the conceptualization is not happening at this level that we need to work at to really bring something awesome to the table. So it's up to us to do it. But what's great about that is we can play. I mean, as our little kids like dreaming and fantasizing about stuff, we can do that and find ways of matching in to the story that we're asked to tell. And you know, so it's a lot of responsibility. It's a little frustrating, to be honest, because it's like we don't get the credit for what we're bringing. But you know what? In these days, it's also for me my joyous, happy place. So screw it. You know, I have a good time, my studio, and I actually get to escape from the real world for a little while, which I'm grateful for. There's a reason why I work in the fantasy genre these days, honestly.
That's awesome. I love that. So obviously you said people tell you go crazy. Is that your comfort zone? Is that what you prefer? Or do you prefer a very, very strict direction, or does it depend?
I know if people tell me to go crazy, A, I am, and B, it's not. They're going to get freaked out. I mean, it happens every time. It's really funny, but I'm now unabashed about it. I don't give a shit. Someone just go crazy and you go crazy and they're like freaked out about it. Whose fault is that? And in some ways, it's a way of educating. It's like, I say, well, you need to put guardrails up, because when you say go crazy, I mean, I've been doing this for a really long time. This is all I do. It's my brain. I'm going to dream. I'm going to have a good time. And I don't know what story you want to tell. You tell me now. You're going to tell me now, you know, because otherwise I'm going to tell you a story that's my story interpretation of the little tiny bit that you've told me. And if you don't like what you're getting back, then now you're going to have to focus and tell me, you know. So, and I think the thing is, don't be afraid. I also feel that, you know, I'm on a show right now that kind of did that. And so what it is me dialing back everything. But there's this essence of everything that I presented there. It's just all dialed back, and that's okay. It's easier to dial back than it is to push in, I think, in a weird way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
I know exactly what you're saying.
You know, and I say to people, I have said these words like a million times in interviews for a gig. I see my job as a sound designer to go to the ends of the universe and bring back all the wild treasures and lay out before you a feast so that you can then pick the food groups that you like and tell me now, you know, and because that's kind of what sound design is now, because people still don't know what the hell we're doing. And the more sophisticated tools we get, they really don't know. And because they can't see it, you know, they can't dream it in a way. I mean, their level for most of the creators we're working with, even the ones that love sound, their level of sophistication is relatively low compared to where we are functioning. I mean, we're high concept people, right? So it's like, you know, I think for all of us right now, the most important thing is to just have fun, listen carefully to what you're being asked to do. But a lot of us are not being told anything. So, you know, it's like we've got to come up with the tools. We've got to come up with ideas. We've got to come up with strategies on our own to function. And these are some of mine. It's really storytelling. It's like if you imbue a sense of logic into the character or whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is, the world building, whatever it is that you're creating, if you imbue a story that's behind the scenes, I don't need to know what it is, but there's a sense of logic in it. There's arcs. There's like almost like, do you know what I mean? There's like some sense of something going on there that sits and makes sense, and is the basis for our choice making, because we need some. We can't. I mean, I have 2 million sound effects in my library and can make infinite stuff from that. So it's like, where do I start? And it is that this is becoming really more and more difficult in our world with creative teams that are giving us really very little to go on, you know. I mean, they'll have I was on a show in the last couple of years that every time I tried to get a hold of somebody, they were in a VFX meeting. Every time. And I got like 10 minutes of time during the whole thing. So they have all this time to talk about VFX, but nothing for this side. If they even shared what they were telling VFX, I would have information. But like, that's the reality of what we're working in these days. You know? So not for the faint of heart, but damn, it's fun, you know?
Kind of the creativity unleashed, I guess. And well, you've executed incredibly on it. I loved all of your work that I've watched so far, and I think the creatures have so much personality, and it's really incredible how, like you've said earlier, kind of they have grown and stayed consistent. How did you manage to you said there was a lot of planning involved in terms of doing all of these seasons in Game of Thrones, for example. How did you manage to kind of keep it consistent in terms of the dragons, for example, as they grow older?
You know, it wasn't, I didn't know that at the beginning. I didn't realize it till like season 5 that this was where it was, like, honestly, it started started to kind of sink in. I was like, oh, damn. And because it got, like, between season 3 and season 4, you get away with scaling to a certain, like, pitching and, you know, whatever, and adding a little bit. But then it was like, oh, God. I mean, there's some point you can't continue to do that. The material starts to fall apart, right?
Yeah.
So, and that can be okay if it's not, you know, and that was the thing. It really was a learning process. And I think it evolved into a very particular way of working that comes out both from that experience and the fact that I got to know my own brain. And I think this is another thing that's really important. So I was diagnosed with ADHD about 5 years ago. And it's like, I kind of thought maybe, but I wasn't sure. And I had a lot of, like, internal shame about some of the weird shit that would come into my head from time to time, you know, like, and it's like that validation helped me realize that, oh, I do have a different way of thinking, and that's okay, you know, and like lean into it, you know what I mean? So when I say, and it's like everybody's brains are different. Your experience is different growing up, everything. So we all bring uniqueness to the table, but the thing is, it's understanding how it works for us, what is unique, who we are, you know, and like kind of like lots of self-digging. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's absolutely freaking true, because it's your unique voice is unique because of everything of who you are, all your experiences and all that kind of stuff. So in starting to kind of understand some of that stuff, and that applies, you know, I did a lot of work on myself, also my own mental health, and just exploring all that stuff and realize truths that I could then embrace and take and know that I had a solid foundation for screaming creature. I'm not going to go into it, but hey, you know, it's like we all have our stuff, but I only point to this to say everybody has something really beautiful and unique to bring to this flow. And so over the years of Game of Thrones, I started to developing a kind of a modular system which works with my kind of brain and the way I think, and breaking down. I realized I had a way of, in my mind, breaking down sounds into small parts. And then also I love analogy and metaphor. So using sonic analogy and sonic metaphors and replacing some of the parts with other parts and then putting things back together. And so in a nutshell, that's how I think and how I construct. And what I realized is it evolved over time. That allowed me to then disassemble and reassemble. And it wasn't very sophisticated at the beginning, but it's become very intentional now. You know, so, you know, fast forward to House of the Dragon. I mean, it was funny. I remember in an interview, someone said after Game of Thrones, so would you want to do dragons again? And I said, maybe. I mean, I'm not close to it, but like I did toddler dragons, teenage dragons, adult dragons, dying dragons, icy zombie dragons. I don't know how much more dragoning there is to dragon, but sure, I'm open. And Miguel Sapochnik was like, hold my beer, here's 17 dragons, all different, and some of them are going to grow up. I actually didn't hear that some of them are going to grow up until recently, so I'm like, oh shit. But because now of the way I actually design, which is super broken down into multi-layers, and some are weird sounds, some are viscerality, some are, size, and it's like, I can pull things apart and reassemble stuff and replace. And so, and again, it has to do with, look, folders and Pro Tools changed my life. I mean, as did clip gain, so we have had innovations that have come over the last few years, have really made this little way of working quite powerful and interesting. And same with plugins and all the plugins we have available to us now. So it's like this just constant exploring and keeping it fresh and upping my game, because the visual effects are upping, and it's like, and schedules are getting smaller. And, so that's how, in terms of consistency, because there were some sounds that were kept, and then other sounds that I could find that would now express something different about the creature's size in particular, or whatever. So that's kind of it. But like, not everybody, we don't always get on shows that go on forever and ever, but it's an interesting thing. Like, I remember being in like a state of shock at the end of season 7, when the ice zombie dragon showed up, the Syrian turned,
that was a big moment.
And then thinking, holy shit, what the hell was going to happen? Because I had to design the blue fire and all that stuff, thinking what's going to happen in season 8. I had no idea. And then turned out it was, a fight between, 3 dragons. It was like, Jesus. I mean, I anticipated 2, but not 3. So, that's the thing. You never know what's going to be in store. So an open design system that you build for yourself is something really great to think about, things that you can change, because if you build sounds that are printed immediately, there's no possibility of opening those designs up. So I have a lot of stuff that's live all the time. Makes it very hard on my system, but keeps it, slippy slidey for progression down the road if I have to. So.
And I assume you keep everything just in case.
I do. I mean, recently I've been pruning, because some stuff I know I'll never go back to. Yeah. But like I have not, for instance, harvested yet from season 1 of House of the Dragon. I have to do that. But I also have been thinking a lot about how I'm going to set up for the next season, and how much I will use of harvested material, and how much I'm going to go back into the original sessions, and what changes I'm going to make, because I've learned a lot even since last year. I'm always trying to learn more myself and up my game better, and be better at what I'm doing, so that I can craft better and sculpt better and produce better quality stuff. Partially because I am ripping the shit out of sound. It's like, how do I hide the seams? How do I make it then a beautiful, delicious sound at the end? That doesn't sound like it's been ripped to shit.
Yeah, relatable.
Yeah, right? Yes. By all of us.
I'm also a huge fan of like making crazy plugin chains.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And just like tons of compression and stuff, and then something that's like a really quiet sound all of a sudden has all these weird artifacts and details, and then kind of like basically printing that and editing it again and again, and then all of a sudden you get really interesting things from weird source. But like you said, you kind of rip it to shit, and then have a certain
it's like doing stuff that, sometimes, I mean, I hear these, the way mastering engineers talk, and I think they would have a freaking heart attack.
Yeah.
if they knew some of the shit that was going on, in my sessions. But, because I don't have because I'm self-taught and I come from a radical art background. I went to a very radical art school that encouraged turning everything upside down and inside out. I have absolutely, I'm sacrilegious about it. Don't care. It's like, I'm going to dig and twist and see, like, what can this sound become? Like, how can, and I have a weird idea in my brain about the essences of sound. Probably sounds like, maybe I've been in California too long, but there's something to me about something in the essence of a sound that to me I feel like is maintained all through. And so it's like the source material is really important to me because I feel like somehow, somewhere, it's still there in the sound and still lives on somehow in its thing, and it speaks to us because we don't know how we process sound, but we are processing thousands and thousands of sound in our daily life every day. So we don't know fully. So I really, really believe in that. And so that's why I'll take a sound source and, like I had, like for Vagar, the big old lady in House of the Dragon, I had some like baby cries from like a infant baby in there, like stretching and, and doing all this stuff. But there was a moment in there that there's something that pops out, and it's like, I feel like I can like hear it in there somehow. Like the sound that makes her sound cranky is that baby who's cranky. And it's like, it's weird to me. Like I can hear it and maybe it doesn't pop out to it. And I'm sure it's not conscious, but maybe on a subconscious level it's working. You know what I mean? So I play around with ideas like that. Probably spend too much time alone in my room, but
I'm sure we all do, to be honest, in this profession.
Totally. I mean, it's one of those, right? I mean, we spend our lives taming and trying to understand this wild child, which is sound, which,
oh, I love that.
I feel like I could spend lifetimes and never fully get it, fully understand it. And it's fabulous, Can never get bored.
Yeah. I mean, totally my experience as well. It's just always fun, and you always discover something new, especially kind of, you're stuck one moment and then in the next you're like, you exit the tunnel to a whole new landscape of possibilities, and it's like, wow, no idea how did I get here?
No, it's like sound crack. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's not tell anybody about it. It's just keep it. No, it is. There's something really, and you often can't tell, you can't guess what the combination of two sounds are going to be. You often can't, because you don't because they've got all these like masking things and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, you think you know how two sounds are going to mesh together, and you often are completely wrong. And that sends you on another, either throws you off the path you're on or sends you on a new amazing path. Like, it's so fascinating to me, all of it. It's great, so.
Yeah, for sure, agree. It's also interesting that you mentioned that you went to a radical art school, because I think a lot of people, including myself, come from a musical background, and in music there's very oftentimes kind of strict rules, not necessarily, but it's kind of how in education is often kind of hammered in of like, thou shall not put the bass in stereo and things like that, because of XYZ or whatever, and all of these things, where you said also with the mastering engineers getting a heart attack, right? And it's kind of those things, and it's interesting that I think a lot of people when they start their sound design careers especially, and throughout, really struggle to break away from that. So it's very interesting to hear that kind of you started on a different path. Do you think, in terms of those rule sets, have you then kind of imposed your own rules to a certain extent along the way, or is it really just kind of like whatever, experiment and see what comes out?
I'm kind of I mean that it fits really well with my personality, because I'm kind of like that. I don't. I've never worked. I've always been freelance. I just don't. I've had the studio number 14. It's just my own journey. I'm doing my own thing. And like I said, it's I know this about myself. You know, I don't put myself in situations where I know I can't just kind of run around free and, you know, do what I need to do to get from A to B, you know. And I've said this to people who are uncomfortable with this. Like, I want to show up as my best self to give you my best work, but I can't do it in your house. I'm sorry. You know, it's like I can't do it under someone else's roof. I just can't. And I also think that comes from being a woman in this industry. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit for the women who are in this group. You know, it's like, look, it has not been easy. It still is not easy. And so this is one of the reasons why I've never worked at a company and have always had my own studio, so that I, away from feeling judged, away from feeling like I'm going to have everything explained to me to do how to do it. It's like, no, I need to find my own voice, and I want to experiment and learn on my own terms, in my own space, in the comfort of my own place. And I think, and also the gatekeeping that sometimes goes on with access to facilities and gear, it's loosening up a little bit, but there's still lots of it going on. And so I think it doesn't matter who you are, but especially I think for women in particular, but for everyone, I think it's really important to have your own space, your own set of gear, you know, small workup. I mean, the way I've grown mine over the years is buying, selling gear on eBay, trying stuff out. Now that doesn't work. Trying this out does, you know, swapping, upgrading, and slowly building. Asking for equipment rental when you work in place, and turning and like literally taking that money and putting it back into your gear, so you have better tools available, and experiment and find your voice. What works for you? What's your best setup? What do you need to make work? You know, and then, you know, and I've slowly now been working on just making a space that's really inspiring to me, because I spend all day here, you know. So it's like I want it to be a place that I want to come into. A few years ago, you know, this room, I hated the speakers and hated the room, and I hated to come in here, and I stopped coming in here. I was working on my laptop for a while because I despised, I don't know what it was. There's something about it. I'd lost confidence in the room. I'd lost confidence in the setup. And I it's like, I need to change this. And so, you know, I've been working on that. And these things come along at different places in your life, but it's like, have your own little kind of safe space that you can, you know. And I think, look, we're all artists, right? So the other thing I think is really important to note, and this is going on with, you know, discussions, you know, with the strikes and all this kind of stuff that we're, you know, witnessing right now. It's like, look, we're artists, and yes, our approach may be artful. We're all participating in the creation of a commodity that's going to be sold by people who really don't care about us, you know, and that's really important to remember, you know. And because of that, I think it's really important, because we are artists, to always maintain a space and some gear and a little setup to create and go wild and do your own thing, and allow, you know, because you're going to discover new stuff you can bring back into your work to make you a little bit more valuable perhaps to them, because you're offering something more, you know, or offering something unique. But also to just allow yourself, because you're going to get frustrated in your job as soon as you start thinking you're making art there, because you're not. You can be artful in it, right? And there isn't, you know, it is a creative endeavor, but you're working a commodity for someone else who's just going to turn around and sell it. And right now we're seeing, it's like, these companies don't really care, you know, they just want to get rich, and they're willing to pay us, but it's like, don't lie to yourself, you know. I think we are able to elevate and bring these experiences to it because we are artists. But because we're artists, we also have to create from our heart. And sometimes we can't do it right here. We can bring tools in and approaches and interesting things. It's just like, I think it's really important to have a space outside, this workspace where we are being paid, you know. So do that for yourselves. Always have that space. And it may not even be sound. Maybe it's, you know, maybe you're want to paint, or you're making music, or whatever it is. A lot of people are making music on the side. Do it, all of it. Because we all need to, it's also a mental health thing. We all need to take care of our mental health now. This world sucks right now. And so all these things for self-care, for self-expression, to feel like worthy and your voice is worthy, because sometimes in these jobs, you get these creative teams who hire you, who don't know what the hell they want, who tell you to go crazy and then tell you your work is shit because it doesn't fit with what they wanted, which they never told you in the first place. And that is a really hard cycle to be caught in sometimes. And all of us are there, And right now, everybody's really super stressed out. So we're going to run into this a lot more. And if you have something going on for yourself, for your tender creative heart on the side, where you can feel like you can self-express freely, I think it's really important self-care right now, especially for us artists, because we're all kind of creative beasts in our own right. But it's like, remember to save some of that for yourself and not give it all the way to people who just want to make money off of what you are capable of, So
I love that you touch on that that topic as well. It's I think that also kind of ties into burnout, which is a really, really big, unfortunate part of our industry. And I think part of that is because as artists, as you say, our identity is tied up so much in our job, and kind of that then bleeds into the outside of our life as well a lot of the time. How important do you think is it then to kind of, to a certain extent, almost create like boundaries between work and life, but also at the same time kind of create, whether it be, I guess, sound or anything else, without the intention of necessarily purpose for commercial use or something like that, I guess? Or
I think it's really important. And I'm not very good with that boundary. I mean, my studio's in my house, and it has been for years.
Yeah.
And I mean, my personal life is such, I don't have a whole lot going on besides this, but this is my joy. I enjoy this. It's like, this journey of sound has been so much more. It's been so much more part of my life. I could go on about that, but it's just like, I don't know. It's a creative journey that involves this amazing thing called sound, and I'm very grateful for it. So yes, it's become really important. I mean, I'm working on a bunch of my own personal projects. Will I ever, I've been talking about this album I'm working on for years, and it's getting super close. But you know what? If I never release it, it's nobody's business but mine. I get to release it when. I get to finish it when. I get to release it how. That I get to share it with who. All of these things I decide. And if I never release it, it has been a huge source of, exploring, both technically for me, but also just emotionally as a human, So I don't know. I mean, a lot of weird things are going on in the industry right now that's kept me from actually doing a whole lot of my work on the side these days. But I know with the strikes, I'm going to have a whole bunch of probably free time coming up. And so I look forward to that. I actually am kind of, okay. And that's actually a different approach, because the last strikes we went through were absolutely devastating and flipped my life upside down and sucked. And so it's been very kind of like a little anxiety inducing, but I've decided I have a list of things. I literally have made a list of things to do while shut down. And I'm gonna just try to do my best to use it wisely for myself. And again, I think it helps, right? It helps if I've had a really rough time with a client and feeling like shit and feeling like, we all have those moments where we think like, oh my God, do I even know what I'm doing anymore? I don't know. But then you turn to your own stuff, and it's like, you must create that space for yourself, a safe space. And that's why I say it's like really important, especially these days, and especially with just the vitriol out there on social media and everybody's angry, and it's just like, God, if we can have these quiet times with ourselves and our own creativity, that's actually quite a beautiful thing and a thing to be very grateful for. But you got to make that space for it, and I think it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the wonderful special parts about field recording as well, especially in nature, where you kind of get to go out and the only thing you're doing really is listening, actively listening to stuff, and kind of, yeah, just
bingo, my friend. We have the possibility built within our medium to being the most present artists.
Yeah.
You can't listen to a recording and fast forward through it at the same time. You can't hear it all and spot and only listen to bits. Like, you will miss the story being told as you're listening. And it's like, so yeah, we always have that to go and do. And one of my things on the list is I'm going to do a whole bunch more field recording because I love doing it. I love also putting recorders out and then going and getting them a couple of days later, and it's like Christmas time and listening to all the stories. It's like so many cool things we get to do, and that can be meditation for us. It can be really healing for us, and I can tell you that. I went through some really bad shit, a bunch of years back, and sound has been insanely healing for me. And so, we have a medium that we're working in that can do this for us. So use it that way. I mean, how do people meditate? By listening to stuff, listening to winds and ocean water. And so we can do that anytime we want. Like, think about that. We have all the tools. We must take them for ourselves too, So.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so cool as well, because I think oftentimes it's kind of some people approach it very output focused, I guess, but it's kind of, well, you're just sitting there and listening. You learn so much. And I went on a hike recently, and I encountered a pair of squirrels, and this reminds me again to the creature thing. And they were like communicating with each other, and one of them, and I was just standing really, really still, trying not to move, and one of them was kind of slowly coming down and got really close and checked me out, and like, they were both twitching their tails, and I could tell, like, oh, okay, they're kind of communicating, and they were making these little chirpy sounds and stuff, and it was like, oh, this is really interesting. I haven't heard, like, these specific sounds before, and I didn't realize the tail twitching is part of the communication, and this and that, and it was just so interesting, because it's like, these are these two creatures just, like, thinking, like, what is this human doing here, kind of, and It was such a special and intimate moment, and I was like, it was so cool to be able to experience that, and yeah, I mean, it's wonderful.
But imagine now, the next time you approach a creature design, now you have that in your head, and that is going to help you. It's something you can call back on. You remember that feeling and what you saw and heard between them, and the nuances of things, and it's like, it will inform your next creature design. And that's what I mean. It's like, the more we can do that. I mean, I listen to thousands of hours of animals. It's like, it's just amazing to me. And we get to do that. And it also brings us back closer to our earth, which is, I mean, we don't need to go into that whole thing, but we know where we're at with that stuff, right? So it's like, and in some ways, we are preserving the sounds of our earth. There are things that are disappearing all the time, and we are great. Like, we're cataloging and databasing our planet and what it sounded like. Go back to recordings from 20 years ago. The earth doesn't sound like that anymore, So think about that too. I mean, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing stuff, what everybody's doing. I'm in awe of everybody. I mean, because we have this big community now recording, I mean, there's places I will never get to on this planet in my lifetime, and I get to listen to them and hear them through another, placement of the mic and the considerations and stuff. So it's just kind of, in our community, we have so much to offer one another, and it's fantastic, honestly. It really is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and yeah, it's just amazing that we get to do that as part of our jobs as well, right? For the very last question, I just would love to end with with kind of like, what was the best piece of advice that was given to you?
Oof. Best piece of advice.
It's a tricky one. Or not necessarily the best, but something that was really impactful that you would like to share.
I just think, you know, I think in terms of where I'm at now, I remember watching Brene Brown, who is a shame therapist, and she talked about just finding your own voice and being unafraid in that. And, you know, look, what we do as sound designers is we're literally bringing voice to other people's visions, right? But in order to do that, you also need to know your own voice. You need to know, and that goes back to, like I was saying, understanding your brain, understanding your voice, what is unique. Because each one of us will do, you know, you give 10 sound designers one, if you can hear my dogs, you give 10 sound designers one thing to design, they're going to all come up with something completely different. And I think because we are unique, we each have a voice. And knowing that and understanding that helps you help bring voice to other people's stuff. And that is what we do, you know. And I think it is the most important that we know our own. So yeah, I guess that's probably, I mean, I think that's probably been the most impactful to me to really, I started thinking about that, thinking about my voice in relationship to what I do, which is sound. You know, it's an interesting thought. So,
and I guess kind of the interesting part of it as well is that that's a constant process, I guess, like finding your voice, because it always evolves to a certain extent.
Totally. To the end of our days,
Yeah.
because we get wiser, we understand more work we do on ourselves, the more we self-explore, the more we show up in our present, you know, changes the nature of that. And I think, and it honors who we are as creative souls, because we do, I mean, to a certain extent, we give a little piece of ourselves away every time we step up to the plate, don't we? You know, so it's like, it's really important to know what we're doing in that. That's where burnout comes, when you start giving away too much of yourself and not feeding yourself. You know, you're hungry, you're starving, you're deplete of the things that you need to function as a human. And I think it's really important to constantly do that, whether it's, you know, sound designers go out, get experiences, get out in the world, do some recording, lots of listening, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we have to constantly feed that beast, because otherwise, yeah, burnout is real, and it can make you hate the thing you love, you know, and that's a shame. We can't let that happen. So.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say or share at all?
No, I'm, you know, happy to be part of this. I think it's really cool what you guys are doing, creating this space for everybody to get together and have these conversations. So congrats on that. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm going to check out some of these panels. Looks like a great time. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paula. It was so fun, and
yeah,
I feel like I learned so much, and also just got to know you, and it was a real pleasure. And yeah, I hope you have a really good week, and good luck on your projects. And yeah, just thank you a lot. Take care.
Thank you. Good luck with the conference.
Thank you. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right.